Yeah. Start Perna. There is no doubt that economically and strategically the partition of the country has weakened both the dominions created by it and it to a truism that an undivided India would have been in every way a stronger state than either, but the Indian Dominion with its ascending states would still cover the larger part of the country with immense resources in men, material and industrial potential. Our debt position is also intrinsically sound, and for a country of its size, India carries only a relatively small burden of unproductive debt. Our external debt is negligible, and we have considerable external resources in the accumulated sterling balances. At the beginning of this year, the total public debt and interest bearing obligations of undivided India stood at roughly rupees 2531 crores, of which only rupees 864 crores represented unproductive debt and rupees 36 crores external debt, while her external reserves amounted to over rupees 1600 crore. The share of Pakistan in these has not yet been determined, but it is unlikely to affect the broad proportions of this picture. Para. The only disturbing features in the position are the persistence of inflationary trends and the unsatisfactory food position, to both of which I have drawn attention elsewhere. The only real answer to inflation is to increase our internal production and thereby close the gap between the available supplies and the purchasing power in the hands of the community, which in present circumstances imports cannot bridge. Till this position is reached, the community must conserve its purchasing power by lending it to government. As regards food, I am sure the House will agree that the country cannot depend identify sorry identifiedly on imports. For one thing, this places us at the mercy of foreign countries for our vital necessities, and for another, large scale imports of food grains seriously affect our foreign exchange position and threaten to consume the bulk of the available resources which are badly required for the industrialization and development of the country. We must concentrate our energies on producing as much food as possible within the country. I suggest that this do not an impossible task, for after all, the total imports from abroad, which have never touched more than 21 million tons in any year so far, represent only a fraction of the total food grains amounting to 45 million tons we produce, although they make a large hole in our available foreign exchange. Para. I should like to make a few observations on the criticism made in certain quarters that the level of taxation introduced in the last budget has seriously affected the incentive for investment. In their last annual report, the Central Board of Directors of the Reserve Bank of India have observed, there seems little doubt now that the severity of the last budget is defeating its own purpose and is hindering the formation of capital for productive purposes unless correctiveness are applied without delay. There is a danger of the very foundations of society and economic life of the country being undermined by deepening penury and despair. A pronouncement of this kind coming from such an authoritative source must receive serious notice. I have no doubt in my mind that it was not the intention of the government to so arrange its taxation policy as to stifle the growth of industry in the country. On the contrary, honorable members must have noticed that in recent months there has been some criticism in certain quarters of the cheap money policy of the government. At the last annual general meeting of the shareholders of the Reserve Bank and Governor of the bank made some observations on this question under the influence of that eminent economist, the late Lord Keynes. Cheap money has been the cardinal feature of the monetary policy in many countries. Stop.